Look inside the data centers powering the modern AI economy. Behind the light and heat are server racks performing trillions of calculations per second, hardware belonging to a company worth $4 trillion. The corporate entity is heavily owned by institutional giants like BlackRock and Vanguard, yet the company's identity is inextricably tied to its founder, Jensen Huang, a CEO whose leather-jacketed appearances draw crowds usually reserved for pop stars. But in 1996, NVIDIA was a microscopic startup in freefall. They were forced to lay off more than half their staff, shrinking from 100 employees down to 40. They had exactly 1 month of payroll left in the bank. The fear of total collapse was so pervasive it became their literal company motto. For years, Huang opened staff meetings with these exact words: "Our company is 30 days from going out of business." How does a company operating under constant existential terror transform into the most valuable corporation on Earth? This market dominance reflects a corporate identity forged by near-death survival rather than a clean, predictable march toward the top of the industry. Huang's capacity for extreme stress traces back to his childhood. Born in Taiwan, his family made an abrupt decision to relocate him and his brother to the United States when he was 9 years old. A logistical error by his aunt and uncle meant that instead of a prestigious boarding school, the young immigrant was accidentally enrolled in the Oneida Baptist Institute, a rural Kentucky reform academy for troubled youth. Because he was too young to attend the academy's classes, Huang was sent to a local public school where he was frequently bullied. Back at the dorms, his daily chores included scrubbing the boys' toilets, while his older brother performed manual labor on a nearby tobacco farm. This grueling routine set a permanent baseline for hard work. By age 15, he was pulling the graveyard shift as a dishwasher and busboy at a local Denny's diner in Oregon. Enduring isolation and physical labor at a young age created a powerful psychological buffer. By the time he entered Silicon Valley, the terrifying volatility of tech entrepreneurship felt manageable. On April 5, 1993, Huang sat in a Denny's booth in East San Jose with 2 other engineers, Chris Malachowsky and Priem. With a combined $40,000 in early capital, they launched NVIDIA. Their first graphics accelerator, the NV1, was a commercial disaster. They built it around quadrilateral primitives, a geometric framework that became instantly obsolete when Microsoft's Direct3D established triangles as the industry standard. A subsequent partnership to build hardware for the Sega Dreamcast collapsed when Sega chose another vendor. After a year of development, the contract vanished, leaving NVIDIA months away from total bankruptcy. In a rare maneuver, Sega's president, Shoichiro Irimajiri, personally intervened. He convinced Sega's management to invest $5 million into the struggling startup, providing just enough capital to keep the lights on. Huang channeled that remaining lifeline into an all-or-nothing gamble on their next product, the Riva 128. When the chip finally launched in August 1997, the company was down to its final 30 days of payroll. It sold 1 million units in 4 months. These repeated cycles institutionalized extreme risk. By the late 90s, betting the entire company on a single architectural leap was no longer a crisis. It was standard operating procedure. While their 1999 invention of the graphics processing unit secured a dominant position in the PC gaming market, Huang knew that rendering video game textures would not guarantee long-term survival against hardware giants like Intel. In 2006, he pivoted toward parallel computing with CUDA, a platform allowing developers to use GPUs to process thousands of complex tasks simultaneously. Developing this cost billions. Huang intentionally ignored Wall Street analysts who punished NVIDIA's stock for the sudden drop in short-term profits. Building a foundational computing architecture a decade before the commercial market demanded it required a strict adherence to first principles thinking, prioritizing fundamental truths over immediate market panic. That massive gamble sat dormant until 2012, when researchers deployed the AlexNet neural network, heavily reducing error rates in image recognition and accelerating modern machine learning. The researchers behind AlexNet ran into a hard physical constraint. Training dense deep learning neural networks requires a massive amount of parallel processing capability. Traditional CPUs simply couldn't handle the math fast enough. When the computer science community looked for hardware to solve this problem, they realized Jensen Huang had already spent the last decade building and perfecting the exact hardware infrastructure they needed. The rapid acceleration of artificial intelligence in the 2010s was not the result of a sudden hardware breakthrough. It was the collision of evolving machine learning theories with NVIDIA's desperate, decade-long gamble on parallel computing. NVIDIA now sits as the foundational layer for global AI. Governments and cloud providers rely on the same parallel processing power that once only served video games. Because millions of developers are deeply integrated into the CUDA software platform, migrating to a rival chipmaker incurs massive switching costs. This software integration forms an impenetrable competitive moat around their hardware. At the center of this dominance sits the same founder from 1993. Huang's signature black leather jacket is a deliberate mechanism chosen by his wife to eliminate daily wardrobe choices, minimizing decision fatigue and preserving his focus. That demand for efficiency scales directly into his corporate governance. He maintains an aggressively flat management structure with roughly 60 direct reports, and he conducts 0 one-on-one meetings, ensuring that insights spread rapidly and decisions are executed without bureaucratic delay. NVIDIA controls the hardware of the future because its leader never detached from the survival instincts of the past. The capacity to endure the pain of innovation, learned at the brink of failure, has become a competitive barrier that rivals struggle to copy.